Hello, hello everybody, and good afternoon. It's good that you could find some time, to join us today at next Ericsson workshop. My name is Vítězslav Horak, and I will, as usually, moderate this session. Our topic today is 5G security, as you could read on the invite, which actually is one of the most frequent 5G themes anyway. And I'm very glad that we have three specialist speakers, with us today. Starting the list with Cveto Gašperut, who you know from basically all of the previous workshops, who is head of Ericsson Czech Republic. On the list is also René Sommer, who held also one of the earlier sessions of the Ericsson workshops. René is Director of Government and Industry Relations of Ericsson. And we have Mikko Karikytö, who is Chief Product Security Officer at Ericsson. And one little reminder to the process. Basically, if you have any questions already during the presentations, which will follow now, please type them into the chat function of this workshop. We will, after the presentations finish, we will read and answer them as they were coming. I don't want to, waste more time of the speakers and hand over to Cveto, who will tell you a little bit more about Ericsson Czech Republic.
Thank you, Vito. Thank you, everybody, for joining this briefing. I think security in IT, or specifically when it comes to 5G security, is a topic that has been quite some time in discussion, both on the operator side, so meaning more technical security, and then also on the policy side, so from the governments and from the government agencies. And also in Czech Republic, this is one of the topics which has been on the radar for quite some time. That's why we decided today that we will choose a topic that we think is very relevant today. And we will have, as Vito said, two speakers, one René, who is looking this more on the policy and industry side from this perspective. And then, as said, we have Mikko, who is Ericsson Chief Product Security Officer, meaning he's responsible for the security in the products in the development. So he's really into the technical part as well. So I think it's going to be an interesting session. As usual, feel free to give us the questions and we will try to answer those. So without further ado, I would give the word to René.
Thank you, Cveto, and thank you very much for the opportunity today. Good afternoon. I would like to start by talking a little bit about what's happening globally in terms of the rollout of 5G networks. This information that you see in front of you is the Global Supplier Association data collecting globally around the commercial 5G network rollout. So this is not about pilots or tests or anything like that. These are real services and real network for commercial use being deployed. And as you can see today, we have 182 5G, 3GPP networks deployed globally. And most of us have not anticipated this fast rollout, and we do believe that actually 5G will be adopted faster than 4G was, and we expect to reach 1 billion subscribers globally on 5G within 3.5 years. It took 4 years for 4G to reach the same volume, and it took 12 years, for example, for Facebook to reach 1 billion users. So the message here is that the momentum is faster and even sooner than we expected. I think the other discussion around 5G, in broadly speaking, is about the ecosystem, and I think this is one attempt to show you about the ecosystem that we see in the 5G domain. So while the discussion may be zooming into specific parts here, you can see that there are at least 400 unique players in the system supplying different parts of the technology and products in this rich ecosystem. This information has been updated by TechNexus, and actually they are talking now about 600 suppliers in the ecosystem. So it is a very dynamic and versatile environment where a lot of different companies play a very important role, and of course standardization bodies that Mikko will later touch upon from a security point of view. If we move to the next slide, I think another discussion that has been about the industry, whether 5G networks are multi-vendor interoperable. And I think that this is one area where I think it is a lot of mismatch of facts and information. What I'm trying to show you here with this picture is to show you the entire logical or parts of the mobile system, everything from the user equipment through the mobile access network, the mobile edge compute, the transport network, core network, and then of course connection to other operators' networks or the internet. And the very idea of having the possibility to use different suppliers within and between the different domain has been the whole purpose of having the 3GPP system in place to allow interoperability between different parts of the ecosystem here. And maybe just as an anecdote here to think about that is, there is a reason why today there are more mobile phone users in the world than there are actually toothbrush users. This is how far we have come with a system in terms of global penetration. Looking at the 5G suppliers and the discussion around the vendor diversity and choice, you have also linked to Omdia research paper below. The highlights I wanted to show you is that on the right-hand side, what you can see in table 1 is the different players that are available in the vendor selection process of operators. While it is of course correct that some are more successful in actually being chosen by the operators, and that is of course this operator's choice based on commercial performance and other features, it is important to recognize that the diversity of suppliers in the different segments is much broader than typically portrayed. And the mismatch happens really between the available choice and actually those who are chosen, where the difference is. On the left-hand side, I would just like to also highlight information from leading 5G countries in terms of 5G rollout and the amount of different suppliers engaged in the different segments in this market that you see covered. And again, if you want to know more about these details, you have the link in the slide, and I believe you will be able to access this information for your own investigation. So I think that was maybe the third message around the diversity also in the 5G equipment market. Maybe lastly, if we also look at the issue around diversity, and if we move to the next slide, please, is related to the geographical view. And again, you have the full document available in the link. And what I'm trying to show you here is looking at the ecosystem, both fixed and mobile infrastructure, the key product domains that are necessary to achieve communication systems. And then you see the different players who are present in the market, the top players, both which companies and which countries they're coming from. And again, I think the point here is to say that while some vendors are described as dominant or prevalent, I think this is another view to show the reality and facts around the supply chain. If we move to the next slide, please. I think what I would also like to touch upon is the RAN evolution and the different terminologies that do seem to be conflated and misunderstood. So it is correct, of course, that we have an evolution in radio access network topology, and while we talk historically, and the 182 slides networks you see are built on classic RAN deployments, there is, of course, an evolution. And just to highlight some important concept here, the term Open RAN that I think many of you might have come across is a broad marketing term, which is not a standard. It means different things, and I will shortly go into more depth how we understand that concept being evolving. Ericsson, of course, has its offering in this space, which we call Cloud RAN. So this is about not only having a virtual RAN, which is about separating software from hardware, but also to implement that separation in a cloud-native, fully virtualized environment. So you can say that Cloud RAN is an evolution of virtual RAN. And then we have the acronyms which are called O-RAN, which stands then for the O-RAN Alliance, which is a consortium of a number of companies that develop technical specifications. This is not a standard defining organization if you look at it from a WTO TBT rules, but it is true that as many other outfits out there do develop technical specifications. And then lastly, we have the term Open RAN without space, which is then referring to the TIP project, which is more focused on implementing different Open RAN products and test them and prove the concepts. So sorry for that about portraying these concepts, but I think they're immensely important for the discussion that is taking place. If we then move to the next slide, looking at the Open RAN benefits, I think that broadly speaking, most in the industry would agree that Open RAN comes as a concept with three different qualitative proposals. You have the cloudification, which is about deploying radio access software functions in a cloud-native environment. And as I was mentioning here, Ericsson offer here is called the Ericsson Cloud RAN, which we do together with HP and Intel in collaboration. So that's the hardware we use for this product. Then we have something which is called RAN automation. This is an evolution where we want to use more of those advanced capabilities like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and also the discussion about microservices or RAPs that are there to be implemented on top of our vendors' equipment like Ericsson. And in this offer space, we recently announced our Ericsson Intelligent Platform, which we are going to offer next year to the market, that can also be used by operators' own software on top of Ericsson or using third-party software from other suppliers. And here we are also offering software development toolkits that can be used to develop those applications. And lastly, we have the discussion about open interfaces, which is specific to the radio access network. And as of today, Ericsson supports 8 of the 10 available interfaces. And this is how we are moving in that space through our Cloud RAN offering. If we move to the next slide also, I think what is important I wanted to stress is about the issue around leadership in terms of developing the technical specifications that are necessary to develop a multi-vendor interoperable system. So I was already alluding to the 3GPP, which is then the global end-to-end open mobile standard. And this standard is there to develop and implement mobile systems end-to-end for all generations, not only some generations, but all, and is the one that is today the option in the market. And these are the 182 networks I was speaking about. In the context of Open RAN and O-RAN specifically, which only then looks at the radio access network part, so it's not a one-to-one comparison with 3GPP. Inside the O-RAN Alliance in 2020, Ericsson was the lead technical contributor. So this is, again, an example of Ericsson leadership and our ambition. And lastly, also, it's important to recognize that within the Orna Alliance, there is also an open source community to develop certain functions based on open source. And again, there Ericsson was the second largest contributor in 2022. So I think I stop here and await question at the end. Over to you, Mikko.
Thank you, René. Thank you, Cveto, for a good background. My name is Mikko Karikytö. I'm the Chief Product Security Officer, and indeed, everything that you will hear from me and see in the presentation is backed by my roots and my background really being in 11 years in hands-on security in telecommunication networks. We have been doing incident response and vulnerability management, ethical hacking, and whatever need be to secure the networks globally, solving the issues for our customers, operators, and keeping citizens safe and their communication safe. So I may have some views here that are rough or based in actual real life experiences. The protecting the end user is really the ultimate end game when we talk about telecommunication security. We're not optimizing here for any operator, for any vendor, or any standardization for. It's really the end user security and safety, privacy that matters. And for that, you need to have a holistic approach. It starts with the standardization, where we all in the industry, all players, vendors, operators, and public communities are contributing together to make sure that the standards are able and providing interoperability so that the networks actually work together. Vendor product development process is an important process where we, and myself as CPSO, are guiding in Ericsson, for example, how do we do security by design? How do we do secure coding, testing, security assurance, ethical hacking of our own products before they go to the customer networks? Then it comes to deployment and operations. Deployment is, of course, where the operator is responsible for setting an architecture and configuration of the network that is protecting it from any kind of external attacks. Operations process is the continuous process where also we need to remember security in any change management or introducing new capacity, new features, whatever need be. Security has to be always a part of there. What is important in this picture is also that the telecom operator really is in charge of choosing the integrators, choosing the vendors, and choosing how to lay out the network. Focus is on the end user experience of network security that I touched already on. And a couple other details you can see on the right-hand side here. If we take the next slide, I'm highlighting some standardization for us here, because it's quite important to remember that the telecommunication network, and René actually very well put it, that it is actually one of the, I would say, almost miracles that humans have made, because it's one of the fastest growing systems that is reaching all parts of the globe, the planet, bringing people together and communicating. And the starting point for allowing that to happen is in the standardization. This is one of the rare fields where we have so unified standards led by 3GPP. Of course, that is the very instrumental standard for telecommunication, but also having these different parties or different forums contributing to different technological parts of the network so that it all comes together. Today's modern telecommunication network is utilizing similar internet technologies that we have used in different means already. So it's really a kind of team effort of different standardization forums to make it happen in the beginning. And this is a starting point for telecommunications and starting point for security in telecommunications. Includes, for example, the protocols and algorithms, what we use across the networks. And this is also the fact that then guarantees that us as users or businesses or industries can be sure that whenever they roam or whenever they move around or establish new branches in different parts of the world, they have similar experience and similar security and privacy in their communication. If we take the next slide, we are highlighting here what really is the difference between the already agreed 3GPP radio access network, the normal 5G or 4G and whatever G radio access network you have, and then what O-RAN is bringing there. There are some added complexity into the O-RAN radio access network, and you can just kind of, taking a glance in this picture, understand that there are new interfaces introduced and some new functions introduced also. And like René said, some of those are hoped to be made then by open source community or completely new small scale players who can introduce these features into the radio network then. In the next slide, I think that I have a summary of some of the considerations when it comes to the security posture of ORAN. And I think that this is very important to understand. It, of course, brings benefits like having open source, providing a little bit of transparency, people having ability to read the code, some of the code at least that is running in the Open RAN interfaces, for example, and it maybe provides some interoperability. At the same time, being someone who is and has been working in product security and vulnerability management, hands-on dealing with some of the worst incidents or occasions when we have had software that has been basically breaking the internet, like Heartbleed in 2014, Shellshock following, and a few others that could be named also. We have been in that storm. What does it mean when a open source component is left unguarded by the whole open source community, and then severe vulnerabilities are found later on there? That takes a lot of effort from a vendor like Ericsson to coordinate across the board, coordinate with all product lines and all areas, all regions, all customers, and make sure that security corrections are shipped into the network in prompt and in time-sensitive manner. So it's not trivial. But also what ORAN introduces is, like I said, is splitting some of the interfaces, basically just introducing a little bit of expanded threat surface. Having done incident response, anyone would understand that the more complex the system is, the more touching points you have, the more exposure you have, the more time you will be spending investigating what went wrong. And this is exactly when you jump on an incident investigation that is very time sensitive and very now and not tomorrow type of operation, where complexity is definitely not your friend. And that comes also to security management. Other security considerations, of course, the normal stuff what we are always considering when building networks, trusted hardware, the cloud security. Our products have been virtual and cloud native for some time already. That takes a different type of, let's say, extra assessments again on how the software be built securely in for that kind of deployment scenarios. And of course, so that we are also contributing to the security of ORAN. And I would actually say that our colleagues have been significantly contributing to some of the most important security features of, for example, the management plane and a few other details in the ORAN specification. We are really bringing those concerns into the common ORAN discussion and making sure that the decisions are made so that the future ORAN specification will be even more secure. Let's go to the next part then. Here we are again looking at the Ericsson Trust Stack. And as you can see on the left-hand side, we have an illustration of an end-to-end, a kind of logical illustration of an end-to-end network. And I think that here the important part is really that when vendors take this specification or the standards of 3GPP, for example, it's not only about writing code to fulfill the standard. It's actually really much about implementing management and control plane systems, subscriber management, and all those things that actually make the network work, make the subscribers, the phones to connect to the network and be billing and charging working, and making sure that the operation across the network is safe and secure and always on top. So there are some of these black dots on the picture here and different domains that you can kind of quickly recognize from there. It's a little bit complex and kind of technology logical picture, but it's really illustrating that it's much more than just a standard that is needed for an end-to-end secure network. And that is what we do as a telecommunication vendor. And how do we do that is in the next slide. If we take a look into the Ericsson security reliability model, this is the model that we created in Ericsson. We recognize that we have a lot of good processes, instructions, and templates and procedures, how we work with security and privacy to our networks. But we needed a model to actually make it a framework that covers all the parts. So many years ago, we came up with the security reliability model. And this indeed is a framework that is making sure that everything that Ericsson as a telecommunication critical infrastructure vendor does and makes, everything that we introduce to the market has the functions and features, security characteristics, and ability to protect the privacy of the end user. We have assurance processes that start with risk assessment, privacy impact assessment. How will this feature impact the end user's privacy? What kind of extra controls and assurance we need to put in place to make sure that no harm is done later on when the network is in operation. That includes ethical hacking, penetration testing, and automate the software scan, static code analysis, dynamic code analysis, and protocol fuzzing, for example, trying to really identify new type of mechanisms, how to break the system and then fix it before it goes to the market. This is really what any responsible software vendor would do. This is the assurance part in our model. Compliance documentation, deployment and operation. Of course, we are supporting and providing capabilities for also secure operation of our technology. The top part of the picture here on the left, I think it's important to explain also, because the security reliability model is not only about our internal things, what happens inside our house, how does our developers write code and how do they test it? It's about our suppliers, the sourcing process, everything, is it free, open source or commercial, off the shelf, or our partners who we work with, they all need to be scrutinized in similar manner as we scrutinize ourselves. That involves also the delivery process, and then in the end, when the networks are deployed into customer networks, how do we support them, how do we serve them, and how do we, for example, operate them in case of managed services. So this is a true end-to-end approach to security of mobile networks. In my last slide, if we go there now already, I think I have a summary here about Ericsson recommendations to ensure security in network end-to-end. In the bottom right corner, as it is, and this is true, the mobile network operator, they are in control of the operations, the deployment, as I said, the architecture, configuration, and the daily operations, deploying principles like least privilege principles, so that everyone who has access to the network in the maintenance side, the service engineers, that they only have access to that part of the network that they really need, and only for that time when they need it, and then the access is revoked. This is basic cyber hygiene. But the network operator is responsible on that, and they have the control over that, as well as also they have the control over who they choose to work with. Is it the Ericsson, another company, who's integrator, and who's operating their network also? On the left-hand side, we have some examples here. We know it very well from experience, seeing having customers in 180 countries and more, that the lifecycle management of the software, firmware, of the devices, equipment running in the network, that is super important. The ever-growing amount and complexity of the attacks are making sure that the software needs to be upgraded promptly, because not leaving the window of opportunity for the attackers too wide. Multi-vendor system integration, all vendors have to come together and make the things work together, but then also the verification and regression testing. So Ericsson is building products from free open source components and commercial components, and then own code and integrating it all together. And that's not trivial. It's not trivial to make this technology work together. And as I explained, some parts of our processes that are continuously going, automated, nightly and weekly running processes. You really have to have those kind of rigid processes to make sure that everything works together and there are no security risks or security gaps left between how the components integrate. And this is very important also if operator is taking more responsibility of integrating more, let's say, smaller components of different domains of the network, for example. Supplier relationship management, indeed, like I said, we expect SRM to be followed by our suppliers. We choose our suppliers based on their capability to follow our security and privacy guidance. Enforce the variable chain of trust, secure agile development, like I said, continuous work ongoing, and then the vulnerability management. Our product security incident response team have been doing continuous group-wide, portfolio-wide vulnerability management from the beginning of 2000s and continue to do it. And these are capabilities that a responsible vendor needs to have to really provide this technology to the networks that we use. I think that this really summarizes actually my presentation. I think that I'm a little bit ahead of time, but then it only allows us to have more discussion maybe. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentations. And now we come with questions. So now is a good time actually to ask questions. Right now we have two. We have one in the chat and one came via email. So I will just read it, even everybody can see it. Is it safe? Jan Láska from Mobilmania is asking, is it safe when a mobile operator chooses multiple suppliers for their 5G networks? And one of the subjects is from the list of companies considered by authorities as a vendor with a risky background. Is it possible to guarantee the security of such a network? For example, Vodafone in Czech Republic uses RAN by Huawei and Core by Ericsson. So how about those combinations?
Well, I think if I may start here, I think it's very important that these assessments that are made by national security authorities, of course, are really questions to them to be asked. It is, I think, a question where assessment of a risky background, which is being highlighted here, is something which is subject and prerogative of the authorities. So in that sense, I think I would direct the questions to them, answering the first part of the question, whether it is possible to have multiple suppliers in a network and whether that changes a security posture. The answer is no. I mean, that's why I think Mikko was talking about. It comes to the whole idea of the standardization process that you can have multiple suppliers in the network. Then, of course, all the caveats that came with what needs to be done by a secure, responsible vendor is a technical consideration.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, one similar question that came via email is, some parts of the network will be built on open and virtual hardware in cloud. Is it an issue for security, or is it the same answer? Maybe Mikko?
Yeah, I guess I can take that. I mean, no, I'm having virtual cloud native network functions. It actually, I think that security has to be regarded in the same way, but in a different way, because in the same way we need to have control over the software and the users, the procedure, how the software is used, how it's deployed, how it's hardened, how it is configured. All that applies even if it's cloud native or virtual. So in addition, actually, then you can maybe have questions about, so then you also have to verify the cloud provider, or you need to be able to trust that the cloud provider is providing a trustworthy platform for the software or the telecommunication equipment to run on. Obviously, at the same time, you get benefits like if a cloud native network function has a problem with security, it's actually the whole design of cloud native is to be able to then shut it down and transfer the traffic on a healthy reconfigured instance and in amount of milliseconds. So that's the whole kind of promise of cloud native and virtual, is that we have this flexibility. So I would say that it actually brings benefit to security also, have that ability to just swift to a secure configuration in a very prompt manner.
If I can add top of Mikko's point here, I think that what is maybe important to recognize is that there are no silver bullets in security here. I think that we have seen over the years different silver bullets being presented as a security solution, and it's unfortunate to say that there is no Gordian knot to be stricken here, because security is a combination of a number of dependencies, which Mikko explained in this trust stack. And I think that every new technological solution that comes here, whether it's network slicing, whether it's cloudification, all of them have their benefits and their weaknesses. And I think it is important to understand where are the benefits and where are the weaknesses. And we haven't yet seen a technological solution that only comes with benefits without any drawbacks. So in that sense, I think that maybe that's the takeaway here as well, that unfortunately we haven't come there yet, that you can only have benefits without any downsides.
Spot on, Rene.
Okay, thank you. Having no more questions on the list, I would just say this was a quite good final word. Thank you, Rene. And let's take this whole session, as a start of another discussion that we can have via emails. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions after that, because all the group here actually will also receive some press materials about it and today's presentation. So feel free to ask any questions and keep in touch about the topic with us via email, and we will pass it over to the speakers and deliver the answers if you need. And let me again thank you to the speakers. Thank you, Mikko. Thanks, Rene, Cveto. Thank you. And yeah, well, let's connect next time, and I think it will be after Christmas already. So Merry Christmas and to everybody, and hope we can see you in the new year with another topic by Ericsson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.